What's up, y'all? It's Drewski, and I've teamed up with Mountain Dew to produce a hilarious new basketball podcast called The Dew Zone with Drewski. Learn the backstories of your favorite ballers and celebrities like Jamal Murray.
Did you have like a favorite team? Was it the Raptors at the time or no? Was the Raptors even started around that time?
Come on, bro.
I ain't that old, fam. You talking like I'm 50.
Taylor Rooks, Asia Wilson, and many more. You won't want to miss this. Listen to The Dew Zone with Drewski on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts.
I'm Chiney Ogwumike.
I'm Lisa Leslie, and we're very excited to tell you about our new podcast with Blue Wire, Front and Center.
Lisa and I are breaking down what's going on in our lives, in the world, and keeping it 100.
We're also learning from amazing guests as well, like Emmanuel Acho.
People that show love to me, I forever got their back.
Vivica A. Fox.
If the foundation isn't right, then the rest of it's going to go wrong from there.
And more.
Subscribe to Front and Center today.
The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. It is 10:39 p.m. in Phoenix, Arizona, which makes it how late where you are, Sam?
It is 12. It just turned 12:40. After midnight, late night hours with us. We're back less than 24 hours after we recorded our last one. I did sign off yesterday by saying I felt like there was going to be some big news this week. And, you know, granted, this is nothing is finalized, but we felt that this was sufficiently big enough that we would hop on and give you guys another pod. Man, I don't know where to start. Do you know where to start?
We should say that Brian Windhorst tweeted that the Phoenix Suns have had conversations about acquiring Chris Paul.
It's a good place to start. I'm glad you know what you're doing here.
It's just, I mean, if people hadn't heard it yet, which is possible, like if you went to bed before the news and you wake up to a podcast tomorrow morning, and I'm the one that breaks it to you, that's hilarious. First of all, I love the idea of me breaking the news to somebody on a Veterans Day morning that Chris Paul might actually be a Phoenix Sun, especially because I spent a good few months tweeting about how that's okay. I felt like a therapist trying to let people know that it's okay to be excited about it, even if it means getting rid of two players that we like potentially in Ricky Rubio and Kelly Oubre Jr. I have a lot of thoughts going through my mind. What was your first thought when you got the notification about that tweet there, Sam?
I mean, I was excited. He's never been my favorite target. I think you have always been more on that train than I have. But at the same time, I appreciate the discourse that we have because I think you've, in a lot of ways, what I appreciate about our relationship is that you simplify things for me sometimes. And I think, honestly, the first thought that I had when I saw the news was, oh, well, Chris Paul, he's a good player. I was thinking about the conversation we had a few weeks ago. You said, I want players who make a lot of money because players who make a lot of money are good players. Or what you said was good players make a lot of money. You shouldn't be scared off by the fact that they make a lot of money because they're good. I think that's honestly all I was thinking here, is that Chris Paul is a good player. He's coming off a fantastic season. By a lot of advanced metrics, he had a better season than any Phoenix Sun has had in the past 10 years, honestly. And so I think there's two ways we can take the conversation. Chris Paul, the basketball player, and what does it mean for the Suns as a basketball team with their strategy. And then we could get a little bit, but I think it's important also, we need to get a little bit nerdy and talk about the logistics and talk about how can we structure this trade, and are there ways to structure the trade that are outside the box? So where do you want to start?
Well, I think the first thing I want to say is, well, first of all, my girlfriend is handing me a drink right now. Thank you. This is emergency podcast hours. Things go a little differently this time of night. Hold on, I'm going to take a drink. Okay. First thing I want to say is Chris Paul is willing to come to the Phoenix Suns. That's what this means. And I don't think that we need to take that for granted. I think the idea that Chris Paul would be willing to be a Phoenix Sun before this specific offseason would have felt completely insane for many reasons. One, he's chasing championships right now, and I genuinely think if you are trading for Chris Paul right now, you now are shifting to, instead of building a team that's fighting for the 8th seed, you're going to try to build a contender right now. That's what this means. And I think the fact that James Jones, Monty Williams, Devin Booker got this team to this place, and I mean, to an extent, Robert Sarver for hiring those people.
Wow, you're going to go there already? Okay,
is a credit to where they are right now.
First of all, it hasn't happened yet.
Yes, but
I would not credit Robert Sarver in this conversation yet.
The fact that it's even rumored, and to be honest, maybe the rumor is all that it is, because it makes the Suns look like a real destination for a good player, and that's what they want. But the fact that it's even rumored likely means that Chris Paul is willing to be a Phoenix Sun, and I think that means something. It means something.
It absolutely means something. It's a huge step in the right direction in legitimizing this franchise, which is something that, as fans, we've coveted. James Jones has coveted. Monty Williams has coveted, I'm sure. Chris Paul, it'd be different if he were making $25 million. He would have a lot more leverage if he were making $25 million a year than he does making $40 million. And so, it's not, what this trade means is that Chris Paul is okay with coming to the Phoenix Suns, but it does not mean that he has his pick of just any destination, because as we know, there's really only a few teams that might have the ability to kind of match those contracts in the first place. So I want to push back slightly on the concept that Chris Paul controls his own destiny and has any contender to choose from. But, for instance, one other team that has been rumored to be interested in Chris Paul, the Milwaukee Bucks. And if Chris Paul is really that focused on winning a championship right now, you would think he would be much more excited about the prospect of going to play with Giannis, even if it's only for one more year, because before Giannis hits free agency, than he would be to go play with some young guys in Phoenix. It's a step towards legitimacy. If this does happen, mostly I'm not interested in what Chris Paul thinks, honestly. I'm interested in the fact that James Jones is willing to be bold enough, or Jeff Bauer, whoever, is willing to be bold enough to make these types of moves now, that they firmly believe that Devin Booker is ready, or maybe, honestly, that they're a little bit scared that Devin Booker is getting antsy, and they want to make these sorts of moves to launch themselves not just to being a 7th or 8th seed fringe playoff team, but to being a firmly established playoff team that can fight for home court advantage, maybe be a second-round playoff team as early as next year. I think that's the goal now if you go for a guy like Chris Paul.
I completely agree, because that's Chris Paul's goal. He's not going to try to go to a team to get knocked out in the first round. He's going to want to try and get as deep as possible. And look, if we are allowed to finally be excited about this, I'm going to be excited about this. And you said you're not worried about what Chris Paul thinks. I'm not worried about what Chris Paul thinks. I'm not worried about what James Jones thinks. I really want to know, what does Ryan Russillo think? No. It is just kind of funny that this type of thing is happening immediately after that report about Devin Booker wanting out. Like, no, this is not the case at this point. Unless they're absolutely terrified of him leaving and Chris Paul is a last-ditch effort. It just doesn't feel like that. And I want to make the case again. I've done this before, but I just want to make this case again. I think that trading for Chris Paul is not a panic move. I think it's good for the short term, and I think it's good for the long term. And there's a couple reasons why. One, he makes you good right away. So obviously that makes you good for the short term. Two, a combination of James Jones, Monty Williams, and Chris Paul have a better chance at fixing Phoenix's culture sort of against Robert Sarver than any other combination of people that I can think of. We're talking about Chris Paul, president of the Players Association, friends with Barack Obama, Chris Paul. Like, this is a guy with influence. And beyond that, long term, his deal is 2 years. He gets you to the playoffs for 2 years, most likely. And then his contract drops off. if you can convince Mikal Bridges and DeAndre Ayton to not sign extensions and save their signing for a long-term deal until that specific offseason, you have $40 million of cap space dropping off. You have a ton of space available. You have the ability of signing Mikal Bridges and DeAndre Ayton over the cap, and you can find other players in that free agency to add to the team at that point. I think that the team can get to the playoffs for 2 years, prove that they're good, prove the worth of those guys, and then sign another free agent in the summer of 2022. I think it's a good move for the short term and the long term. What do you think?
I totally agree with you. I think the question is of depth. And that's where we need to transition the conversation over to the logistics, because I think it's very, very clear. If you have a starting five of Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, power forward to be determined, we'll kind of have that. That's part of the other conversation in a second. But DeAndre Ayton, your top 4 or 5 guys are going to be very good. They're going to be good defensively. They're going to be good offensively. How you build around them is... There's a couple different ways you could go about it. So do you want to start talking about how we think we should actually... Well, actually, here's where I want to start. Is there an offer? At what point... What is the maximum amount of value that OKC can kind of ask for that kind of makes you balk at the offer and say, you know what?
Yeah.
It was worth a shot, but I don't actually want to go that far.
I think that you basically have to do Kelly Oubre and Ricky Rubio. I don't think that the OKC Thunder are trying to trade for Ricky Rubio, although I think Ricky Rubio on that team is kind of fascinating in a lot of ways, assuming they don't tear it all apart like they could do. I think they probably want Kelly Oubre to flip for picks, Ricky Rubio just to have salary. Like they need to pay players. They're probably going to tank. Sad situation for Ricky Rubio. We don't have to get into that too much right now. But I think in a lot of ways, the prize is Kelly Oubre at that point. And I'd be willing to trade those 2 guys.
Okay.
And beyond that, I would not include any of the other players on the Suns if I could avoid including any of the other players. Now, that's relatively simple to say because there's not a lot left as far as guys that are actually signed on the team. Basically, what that means is obviously you're not trading Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. And for me, Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson are non-starters at that point.
Sure.
If you absolutely have to include a draft pick, I would try to avoid including this 10th pick this year, because with that 10th pick, you can pick a wing to try and replace Kelly Oubre. And I would offer a protected, hopefully lottery protected pick for 2021, because hopefully the Suns are not in the lottery anyway, and they get a late pick. But if everything goes to shit, he injures himself, and they're terrible, then they still get a pick in a good draft. So that's as far as I would go. Essentially, Ricky Rubio, Kelly Oubre, and a protected 2021 first-round pick.
I just want to... This might take me a second to look up, because I'm doing it in real time here, but I want to look up exactly what picks Oklahoma City has.
That's a long list.
It's a very long list, because here's the thing. They have only the 25th pick this year. Nah, next year, oh my God, it's so complicated. Why is this so complicated? So they have so many picks, but next year they have a first-round pick from Miami and or Houston. It's like a 3-way swap where they get the most favorable type of thing. So it won't be... I thought maybe it was a situation where they already had 3 or 4 first-round picks next year because of all the trades they've made recently.
Right.
In which case they would demand the 2021. I think... Yeah, I'm not willing to give up the 10th pick outright. First, let me pull back here a little bit. So there's 2 scenarios. Scenario A, that obviously very clearly works under cap constraints, is Kelly Oubre and Ricky Rubio, and then other little tiny pieces, maybe
Ty
salaries, Ty Jerome, draft assets, depending on exactly what it is. But we know very clearly that Kelly Oubre, Ricky Rubio, as a baseline package works for this trade. I think there is a 99% chance that is the actual trade. There's a scenario B that we agonized over for the last hour fact checking. We fact check with a couple of different people, so I think we're going to go down that path in a second if you really, really want to keep Kelly Oubre. But 99% chance I think that Rubio and Oubre are gone. So then the question is just how much further beyond that are you willing to go? Because obviously OKC, they're not in it for Ricky Rubio, as you said. They might be in it for Kelly Oubre, but honestly, if they are, it's only to swap him maybe for another first-round pick. I don't think they're super interested in his long-term value. I think I'd be willing to give them the 10th pick this year, but I only if I can swap it. I'd do a 10 for 25.
The 25th? Yeah.
I'd do a 10 for 25 swap. Right. Because the other thing about bringing in Chris Paul, the other thing about losing Ricky Rubio and Kelly Oubre, it would really be nice to just have some sort of draft capital this year, even if it's a late first-round pick that's not super valuable, even if it's like an early second-round pick. Just something to go out and get a cheap, maybe kind of NBA-ready-ish prospect that you can plug into the back end of your rotation who's going to not make a lot of money. Because at this point, with Chris Paul on the team, with Devin Booker and the other contracts, the Suns are going to be obviously in an over-the-cap team, basically, no matter what they do this offseason. I don't think they're going to be they're not going to push the luxury tax or anything, but they will be solidly over the cap. 10 for 25 is a swap that I do. I would totally be comfortable doing the other thing that you suggested, which is push it back to next year and offer them a protected pick. If they say, no, just give us the 10th pick and we're not giving you anything, I don't know that I want them that bad. I don't think I do. I think there's plenty of other options that we can pursue this offseason. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, the reason I tend to agree with that is that losing Kelly Oubre, look, Chris Paul is maybe the greatest point guard of all time. I just want to preface everything I'm saying for that. But when you have a Chris Paul team, the team has to be a Chris Paul team. Like, it has to make a lot of sense for what you're building. Devin Booker fits in perfectly. DeAndre Ayton is essentially like built in a lab to play with Chris Paul in a lot of ways, especially if that 3 starts dropping regularly next season. But beyond that, you want wings. It's just like every other team when you're trying to build a really good team around players that can create for others. You want wings. That means Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and Kelly Oubre is obviously one of those guys. But if Kelly Oubre is gone, you want that 10th pick to try and get one, and there are wings in this draft that make it worthwhile. That means Devin Vassell, who can likely contribute right away. Even Okoro, if he's available at 10, can likely contribute right away. Patrick Williams might take a little bit longer, but could be someone that contributes in a small role right away. And I think if you're losing a guy like Kelly Oubre, trying to replace that guy on minimum deals is essentially impossible.
It's a fool's errand. It's very, very difficult. I mean, you can't go out and... I mean, that's kind of what the Houston Rockets have been trying to do, ironically enough. Chris Paul's old team that got very far was very good, but... if you find yourself trying to replace Kelly Oubre with the likes of a Luke Ba-Mute or a Thabo Sefolosha or something like that, it's not going to work out too well for you. Yeah. So there needs to be some way to replenish your wing depth. But if you go this route, you trade Kelly Oubre, and obviously we appreciate. I'm talking about him here as if he's already gone. If we do trade Kelly Oubre, we will always be appreciative of his efforts in building up the Suns culture over the past couple of years. And I do still love Kelly Oubre as a player. If we do trade him and Ricky Rubio, there is the ability to still go in and as a relatively deep team next year because you can still preserve your cap space. You can roughly match those salaries. You can preserve some cap space. You can re-sign guys like Dario Saric and Aaron Baines and Javon Carter. I think that's the main trio that most people who want to bring back the squad want to retain. And then beyond that, you'd still have your mid-level exception. You could still go out, target. We've talked about them before. Maybe at that point, Chris Paul on the team. Maybe Jay Crowder will come for the mid-level exception to replace Kelly Oubre at small forward.
I was just on Dan Favali's podcast, the Hardwood Knocks podcast, Bleacher Report thing, and in that podcast, he actually said, "What about Paul Millsap? Somebody might be willing, to take less to play on a team, with Chris Paul." Yeah,
exactly. I mean, I think maybe Paul Millsap does come. Maybe Jay Crowder does come. Justin Holiday, again, a name I've thrown out 100 times. Like, you can still get a player of that caliber. Not as good as Kelly Oubre, but you can still add another player on top of Chris Paul. You can still retain other talent. You put that all together, and I think it's a relatively good team. It's maybe not as deep as you otherwise could be, but you got to make sacrifices somewhere. And Chris Paul last year was a top 15 player in the NBA. So,
even though sports had a break, your business didn't. You have to keep moving, and that makes hiring more important than ever. Indeed is here to help. Indeed.com is the #1 job site in the world because Indeed gets you the best people fast. Unlike other sites, Indeed gives you full control and payment flexibility over your hiring. You only pay for what you need, and you can pause your account at any time. And there's no long-term contracts. Plus, Indeed provides powerful tools to make your search that much easier, like sponsored jobs, which are shown to be 3.5 times more likely to result in a hire. With 73% of online job seekers visiting Indeed each month, Indeed is going to get you the important hire you need, just like they have for over 3 million businesses. Right now, Indeed is offering our listeners a free $75 credit to boost your job post, which means more quality candidates will see it fast. Try Indeed with a free $75 credit at Indeed.com/BlueWire. This is their best offer available anywhere. Go right now to Indeed.com/BlueWire. Terms and conditions apply. Offer valid through December 31st. Football is back in full swing. You might not be at the game this year, but you can still be in on the action at BetOnline. BetOnline is going the extra mile to make sure you can get in on every possible chance to win this season. From game spreads and totals to team, player, and coaching props, BetOnline gives you more options to wager than anywhere else. You can get in on their season opening bonuses today and start off wagering on wins, divisions, and championship futures all day, every day. Head to BetOnline today and take advantage of all the great sign-up bonuses. Don't forget to use the promo code BlueWire at betonline.ag. That's BlueWire, all one word. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. So, somebody on Twitter just tagged me in a video of James Jones and Sam Presti famously walking to the back tunnel in Phoenix in January of 2020 saying, "Let's talk." And that happened. I remember when it happened, and I remember us talking about it when I think we made some jokes about it because
that's all it
we're
deserved
jokes
at the time, you know? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But it is kind of funny to look at that right now. Here, I guess we should address something that's on everyone's mind. Can you make this trade without getting rid of Kelly Oubre?
Here's where it gets really interesting. And here's where it's above our heads. So we had to consult other people.
Yeah. So what we did is we messaged a few people. I messaged our friend Dan Favali. And of course, we messaged our local Suns cap expert, David Nash. And essentially, you come up, there's a way to do it. And it's a trade that's essentially built around getting rid of everyone on the team as far as like waiving all cap holds and declining all team options. All of them, they're gone. Now, at that point, there's very few people on the roster. There's like 5 or 6 people on the roster. Then you trade the 10th pick.
Exactly.
No more 10th pick.
No more 10th
and you
pick
trade
either.
Ricky Rubio.
No rookie.
Yes.
No Ricky Rubio.
You also have to pick up the option on guys like Elie Okobo to trade them to create the right kind of space to do this. Now,
So essentially, post-trade, it is possible to trade Ricky Rubio and a bunch of other kind of minimum contract guys that you picked up the option on, and the value of the 10th pick, which is about $4.5 million.
Right.
And then absorb Chris Paul using all of your cap space. Post-trade, this is straight from one of our sources. Post-trade, you'd be left with Devin Booker, Kelly Oubre, DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and Chris Paul. That is, let me do some quick maths, 6 players. 6 players plus 6 minimum roster charges gets you right to the figure of $109 million, which is next year's salary cap.
And I want to just quickly just touch on that. It is almost exactly the salary cap. You're allowed to go slightly over the cap, and in this case, I think they're $100,000 over the cap, which is allowed. The number is so close to the salary cap, it almost feels impossible. And I think at this point, you kind of look at it and say, if you're OKC, would you rather have the 10th pick in this draft, which is considered or Kelly Oubre, who you can now flip into something else? And I think that's actually a good conversation. I think, my first thought was they do this because Kelly Oubre's in the deal. There's 2 reasons, right? Kelly Oubre, if he works, He's a pretty good player. He's relatively young, and you can keep him and pair him with a guy like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. And if it doesn't work, you can flip him for like a first-round pick next year or in 2 years or whatever. And Sam Presti is horny for picks, so he would definitely do that. So there's options with Kelly Oubre Jr.
Not to mention, it's not an either-or situation, right? Because we just said we'd be like, I would do a 10 for 25 swap in addition to giving them Oubre. So it's not in that situation they get Oubre and the 10. So why would they just want Oubre? They're gonna ask for more. But even beyond that, it's also very convoluted to do this, because in this situation where you don't trade Kelly Oubre, well, you need to be very, very sure. You need to come to an agreement with OKC on draft night that we are going to, because you can't keep the $4.5 million value of the 10th pick and pull off this trade, because you won't have the necessary cap space to absorb Chris Paul's salary. So on draft night, you need to be very clear. Who is the prospect that OKC wants? We will pick him for you. A few days later, we will pick up the options of all of these necessary players who we will then trade to you to clear all of the cap space and renounce all of the cap holds. So this is a trade that needs to be pre-planned out a couple of weeks in advance, and OKC can't get cold feet. Because what happens if OKC gets cold feet? You've decided on draft night that you're going to take some random guy that you don't actually want for the Thunder. You can't actually see the trade through to its completion until maybe about a week later, once you've renounced all of those cap holds on other players. And then OKC, pulls out, decides they don't want to do it, and you're stuck with a guy you don't actually want in the draft. So it's much more complicated to do this.
I just want to say, for those of you who are having trouble following what Sam just said, the reason he's saying that is because in order to make the trade work without Kelly Oubre Jr., it has to go down after the draft, after the players from the draft have now been signed into their official deals, which also makes it complicated because now you have less time. Like, this is already a truncated offseason as it is. Less time with your full roster and understanding who your full roster is complicated. So I think for Suns fans, we're weighing this on whether or not you have the flexibility that trading Oubre offers you, or you basically forego all that flexibility for just keeping Kelly Oubre and getting rid of the 10th pick. And I think for OKC, I think you do this because of Kelly Oubre and the potential of maybe swapping a pick or getting a future pick. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. But as I said before, I personally have not been fully convinced that James Jones is in love with Kelly Oubre anyway. I think there's a chance that this was something that was going to happen. And here's something else, too. Kelly Oubre did sign a 2-year, $30 million deal that basically made him a trade chip. That's what that deal did. It turned him into an expiring contract after the first year of his deal at a mid-level salary that is easy to trade. And look, if he signed a long-term deal, we wouldn't be having this conversation as it is. But I do want to point out something. James Jones could potentially turn Ryan McDonough signing Trevor Ariza into Chris Paul, which is really funny to think about.
That would be really impressive if he could pull it off. I mean, I'll wait a couple years to see how a Chris Paul-led Suns team actually performs, if it happens. But yeah, that would be something.
So there seems to be two sides of the thought of Chris Paul as far as his influence, his effect on a number 1 overall pick named DeAndre Ayton. I tend to think he'll be great for him because at the very least, we'll find out what DeAndre Ayton's made of. At the very least. What side do you fall on that? Do you think that this could be damaging? Do you think he's going to want to kill DeAndre Ayton?
Damaging? What does damaging mean? Here's the thing. You can't... Look, I'm a modern man. I hold myself
as Arcade Fire says, yeah.
I'm a modern man, as Win Butler says. I hold myself to modern principles of masculinity. I'm not a tough love guy by any means. That being said, I'm not some 55-year-old, sports shock jock radio host type guy. However, I don't want DeAndre Ayton to be coddled too hard because we have a really tough decision coming up with DeAndre Ayton as soon as a year from now, where we have to decide if it's financially viable in the year 2021 or 2022 to still pay a center $30 million in the NBA these days. I think that is something that is only worth doing if they are really a superstar player, and that decision is coming sooner than we think. So I love the idea of getting a player in here who's going to challenge DeAndre Ayton and really force him to rise up to the challenge of wanting to be one of the main franchise centerpieces on what, a team that would aspire to be a playoff team. And again, not just a 7th seed or 8th seed playoff team, but actually potentially a top 4 seed in the Western Conference. So, I love the idea. And if Chris Paul comes in here and DeAndre Ayton isn't up to that challenge and we find that out in year 3 and then we don't have to pay him $30 million and we can cut ties earlier than that, great. Because it just means we know what we have in DeAndre Ayton. We need to find out exactly what we have in this guy, because right now, a lot of Suns fans are clinging on to the hope that he is the next Karl Anthony Towns or the next Joel Embiid, and he very well could be. I don't think it's super likely. He very well could be, but the sooner we find that out, the better. I don't want, you can't hold on to the kind of mystery box principle of, he could be anything forever. Potential fades fast in the NBA, and by year 3 or 4, we really need to have an idea of what he's going to be.
If DeAndre Ayton cannot handle Chris Paul halfway through the season, then DeAndre Ayton is likely on the trade block, I think, in a lot of ways. But that's something that we can address, and if that were ever to come down.
You said it already in this episode, Mike. If arguably the greatest point guard in the history of the NBA comes in, and you don't find that to be a workable situation as DeAndre Ayton, you can't make it work. I don't want to tie my future to this guy in the first place. So he should be on the trade block at that point. Now, if the rest of the league, again, I don't think this is going to happen. I just want to make it clear.
Really?
I think DeAndre Ayton can thrive in year 3
Oh,
with
yes.
Chris Paul. That's what I'm saying.
I think Chris Paul will be great for DeAndre Ayton.
I just want to get that.
Buckets. It'll be the easiest buckets he's ever had.
Exactly.
And 2, I think it's not the worst thing to get yelled at by a legend a few times. I think it can make a difference. I don't think this is, Michael Jordan.
Kwame Brown.
Yeah, beating up on a guy who can't take it. I think Chris Paul probably learned a lot from the fact that he couldn't get along with James Harden. That was his best path to a championship. Obviously, he was a different man in OKC. This was a man telling Lou Dort, who can't shoot, to shoot as much as he wants in the playoffs. So I think that, it's a different guy. Honestly, this year made me like Chris Paul. I kind of hated him before this year in a lot of ways. So,
Chris Paul is one of the most loyal guys in the NBA. He always, like you said, president of the Players Association. The experience that a lot of fans tie to Chris Paul is the experience of watching him play against your favorite team. And so you're mad at the fact that you constantly see him whining about calls and flopping and arguing with the refs. You have a different association when you think of Chris Paul than the players that Chris Paul plays with have of Chris Paul. Players who play with Chris Paul, they love that guy. He always has their back. And, he might yell at you sometimes. You think of that famous moment with DeAndre Jordan. Blowing that, DeAndre deserved that. The other DeAndre, but overall, overall, I'm sure you could collect every player who's played with Chris Paul in his career into a room and say, was that a beneficial experience for you overall playing with that guy? And they're going to say, absolutely. So again, I wonder. Again,
I think there were times in his career where maybe he wasn't the easiest to play with, and some of those people don't like him. But I do think that it appears that he has grown. I don't think that that's necessarily the case anymore. I just look at him more as he's a veteran now. He's more of a guy that understands his place in the league. It is kind of funny to think he was the president of the Players Association when they bargained for the previous CBA, which essentially added this sort of veteran max deal that he signed. It allowed him to sign this $40 million plus year deal. Now this $40 million plus year deal is limiting where he can play. It completely limits his options. It makes it really difficult for him to play on a contender, for an example, like a ready-made contender, unlike what we were talking about for the Suns. And that's just kind of it's like a monkey's paw thing. It's a weird irony of he created the system that now limits his options. But
that's a risk. That's a risk you always take when you make a lot of money as a player. Again, some players don't like moving their families cross country all the time. Yeah. Some players are ring chasers, But the appeal of a 5-year contract and a 5-year max contract for a lot of these guys is that you do become immovable in a sense. I don't know which side of the spectrum Chris Paul falls on.
That's a good point.
But
Yeah, it will be odd that he will have been traded now at this point multiple times in that deal. Whether it's the Suns or somewhere else, like multiple times in that veteran max deal. I don't know that situation will be likely. Like LeBron's not going to be traded. LeBron has the same deal, essentially. He's not going to be traded multiple times within that deal.
So it sounds like we're in agreement. There is technically a chance that you could do this and still keep Kelly Oubre, but a very small chance, and that's not what we're doing. We're basically admitting here a package is going to be centered around Ricky Rubio and Kelly Oubre. How much further than that you want to go is kind of up to you. We've already stated our terms on that, but that would be the framework of the trade.
Yeah.
I guess one other question that I have for you stemming from that is, you could still renounce Dario Saric and Aaron Baines and Javon Carter, all those guys, Frank Kaminsky, and you could still then use some remaining cap space to go after. I mean, like, imagine a starting 5. When I was talking about the power forward earlier, imagine a starting 5 for a second of if you do go out and get Christian Wood or Jeremy Grant or Davis Bertans alongside Chris Paul and Devin Booker and Mikal Bridges and DeAndre Ayton. You're foregoing some depth by doing that, but these are scenarios that are now possible. Mm-hmm. And I mean, how insane would those lineups potentially be? Imagine Chris Paul and Devin Booker as your backcourt, DeAndre Ayton catching lobs, and Davis Bertans spacing the floor from out to 30 feet.
Good God.
It's
unguardable.
Possibly the best offense in the NBA next year.
Yes.
And it's totally feasible now.
If we're just roster baiting now, which I'm okay with, just picture the lineup of Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, DeAndre Ayton in the playoffs. It's perfect. It's exactly what you want in the playoffs. It's 2 of the best decision makers and one of the greatest scorers in the NBA. Chris Paul being one of the most clutch guys in the NBA as well, surrounded by multiple players who are skilled offensively, and then DeAndre Ayton, whatever leap he takes next year, which could be big, he could be one of the best defenders in the NBA next year. I don't think that's completely insane to say. It's incredible to picture. It's genuinely exciting, and I want Suns fans to, if this does happen, be okay being genuinely excited about this. It's complicated. Chris Paul is a unlikable guy when you play against him, but this is the type of move where I think there's a chance that the Suns can have a little bit of struggles in the regular season, but I think they will make the playoffs.
I think it sounds like a team that's built for the playoffs.
But when they're in the playoffs,
it has
good
balance.
God, it's perfect. It's exactly what you want.
Exactly.
It's exactly. We talk about the value of the mid-range in the playoffs. Well, guess what? The Suns would have 2 of the best mid-range shooters in the NBA at the guard positions.
Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, right?
Good God. How dare you?
No, you cut the mid-range out of DeAndre's game. You have him space it out to 3. And then, Chris Paul is a 60% mid-range shooter. He's like no other. He's more automatic than any other player of his generation, at least, from that range. So he's incredible. It is a team. It's just built for playoff basketball. It would be really exciting. And I have a bit of an axe to grind here, actually, a little bit. Not to segue too hard, but I'm looking at the Bright Side of the Sun article that, of course, our other friend, Dave King, just wrote about the trade. And there's a poll here at the end of the article saying, would you acquire Chris Paul for the Suns? And 40... Now, the Bright Side of the Sun readership is a little bit different. It's not necessarily a massive overlap, I don't think, with the listeners of our podcast. But 43% of the people here in this poll are saying, no, I don't want Chris Paul. And I just don't get it, man. Like, that's basically half the Suns fan base out there. So, it stands to reason that maybe roughly half of the people... What?
I mean, a month ago when I talked about it, what do you think that number would have been? 10% would say yes? 90% would have said
90%. No, a month ago when you were advocating for it, certainly 90%. It felt like you were backed into a corner. My question is,
I lost a lot of followers, I'm pretty sure.
For the 50%, roughly holdouts who are listening to this podcast right now, what is it about this that you can't get on board with? I mean, I know he makes a lot of money. I know he's 36 years old, but the Suns would be a better basketball team. The stats back that up. The eye test, I think, backs it up. They would be built for playoff basketball. They would be respected again, legitimate again in the eyes of national analysts. They would probably have more than a dozen national TV games next year, too. And I think we've already covered, too. I think there's a path to legitimizing yourself for the next 2 years,
Yes.
and then building on that so that you have
Yes.
a long-term path and not
Thank
just a
you.
short-term one.
The
So,
Suns
I don't
are
know.
playing
I mean,
on Christmas Day if this happens. That's the difference.
Yeah, the Suns are having a marquee matchup against the Dallas Mavericks and Luka and KP on Christmas Day to celebrate the beginning of a rivalry that will take place for the next 10 years. So to you people, if you're still holding out, if you're still against this, but that's okay. I'm not, attacking you, but what are you holding out for? What are you waiting for? We said no to... I'm just thinking about all the players we've said no to over the years. We said no to Kyrie Irving. We said no to Blake Griffin. We could have had some star players by now. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? I think this is the move. And I started the podcast by saying it's not my favorite move. It's not my absolute favorite move. And there are ways where, if they want the 10th pick and another draft pick on top of that, they can go fuck themselves. Like, there's certain things that I'm just not willing to give up for Chris Paul.
And I don't think you'll have to. I just want to reiterate that.
Sure.
He makes a lot of money. It's hard to find places for him that he could actually be traded.
If the trade is purely just Kelly Oubre and Ricky Rubio for Chris Paul, maybe a pick swap or something, I don't know, man. I mean, here's
my best pitch to Suns fans that are holding out. Build a better team next season. I bet you can't. I bet you can't. A realistic move that can make the team better next season. And here's the thing. I'm going to say this again. The age that Chris Paul will be when he starts this next season is the same age as Steve Nash when the Suns last went to the Western Conference Finals. 35 years old. That's how old Steve Nash was in 2009, 2010. It's not completely insane to expect somebody at that age to still have a great season if they take care of themselves, and very few people take care of themselves better than Chris Paul. Is there disaster potential? Yes, but is there disaster potential when you make a move like this? Yeah, I think it's worthwhile. I think it's a risk-reward thing. You have to weigh them against each other. And look, I've always come out on the side of this is the best possible team you can make for next season, and that is enough for me to say that it's acceptable. It's more than acceptable. It's exciting. It's very exciting. I think it could be very fun.
I think it's thrilling. I think it's nauseating in a good way. Like, I would be scared. I would be scared of the potential. And that's why, for the holdouts, I think I understand what you're feeling potentially, because I think I'm feeling the same thing. I'm thinking that if this doesn't pan out, it's over. Like, Devin Booker is going to request a trade. You know what I mean? Like, there is potential for that.
And they like Kelly Oubre and they like Ricky Rubio, not just on the court, their personalities. Like, we have grown to like these guys. And I think that's a fair thing to do. It is kind of funny to picture Kellen Olson and Dave King asking questions to Chris Paul after spending years asking questions
to Mike James,
to people who are not in the NBA now.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, just like, it's been 10 years, guys. We've waited long enough. Let's live on the edge. Let's take this year and live on the edge. I think we're ready.
I'm ready.
2010-11, I got a chance to play with a special team. Monty Williams was the head coach that year. And, you play with some guys for 1 year, 2 years, you never know, and you make connections for a lifetime. So
Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, and Thomas Hearns. Legends, whose four-way rivalry defined one of the greatest eras in boxing history. Relive their decade of dominance in the new Showtime sports documentary, The Kings, a 4-part series premiering Sunday, June 6th, only on Showtime.